Deep within the steel labyrinth of America's mightiest warships lies a chamber so secretive, so heavily guarded, that most sailors who spend years aboard these floating cities will never lay eyes on it. These hidden sanctuaries represent the ultimate expression of naval security. Places where even admirals might be denied entry without proper clearance. Today, we pull back the curtain on the most isolated places aboard an aircraft carrier. The secret chambers that form the heart of American naval power, yet remain invisible to all but a select few. These are not merely rooms. They are fortresses within fortresses, designed to protect the most sensitive aspects of naval operations and, in some cases, the most destructive weapons ever created by mankind. The most isolated place on an aircraft carrier isn't just difficult to access. It's designed to remain operational even if the rest of the ship is compromised. Few ever see these chambers, but their existence helps guarantee the freedom of the seas that we all depend upon. If you've ever served on a carrier and had special access to these restricted areas, type yes in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective while respecting operational security. The floating city. To understand just how isolated these special compartments are, we must first appreciate the scale of the environment surrounding them. A modern Nimitz-class aircraft carrier stands taller than a 20-story building and stretches longer than 3 football fields. These vessels displace over 100,000 tons of water and house more than 5,000 personnel when fully staffed. Aircraft carriers represent the largest warships ever constructed, complete with their own airports, power plants, hospitals, and living quarters. The USS Gerald R. Ford, America's newest carrier, contains over 4,000 separate compartments connected by 2,000 phones and 2,500 miles of electrical cable. These floating cities operate as small towns with their own zip codes, police forces, fire departments, and governance structures. They produce 400,000 gallons of fresh water daily and serve over 18,000 meals. Flight operations on the 4.5-acre flight deck occur day and night, launching and recovering aircraft every 60 seconds during peak operations. Yet even in this bustling maritime metropolis, certain spaces remain eerily quiet, accessed by only a handful of specially trained personnel. Layers of security aboard aircraft carriers operates on a principle known as defense in depth. Multiple overlapping layers of protection that create concentric rings of security. The first layer begins miles from the ship itself, where a protective screen of escort vessels and aircraft monitor for potential threats. Next comes the carrier's hull, massive steel plates designed to withstand tremendous punishment. Internal security begins at the quarterdeck, where armed watchstanders verify the identity of everyone boarding. Once aboard, sailors navigate a complex system of passageways where certain routes remain restricted to all but authorized personnel. Access to sensitive areas requires passing through multiple checkpoints, each more stringent than the last. Specialized identification cards, PIN codes, and in the most sensitive areas, biometric verification ensure that only those with proper clearance can proceed deeper into the ship's restricted sections. Captain James Harrington, Retina, former commanding officer of the USS Theodore Roosevelt, explains, "Every sailor aboard knows exactly where they're allowed to go and where they're not. Attempting to access spaces beyond your authorization isn't just frowned upon, it's a serious offense that can end careers or even result in brig time. This compartmentalization creates natural isolation, but certain spaces take this concept to extraordinary levels." The nuclear heart. At the core of modern American aircraft carriers beats a nuclear heart, 2 pressurized water reactors that provide virtually unlimited range and endurance. These engineering marvels generate the 100,000-plus horsepower needed to drive these massive vessels through the water at speeds exceeding 30 knots while simultaneously powering all onboard systems. The reactor compartment represents one of the most isolated spaces aboard any carrier. Surrounded by massive concrete and lead shielding, these chambers are accessible only through specially designed hatches that incorporate radiation barriers and multiple security measures. Access to these spaces requires not merely high security clearance, but specialized nuclear training under the demanding standards of the Naval Nuclear Propulsion Program, often called the Nuclear Navy, established by the legendary Admiral Hyman Rickover. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Wells, a nuclear engineering officer with 15 years of service, describes the isolation. The reactor compartment exists in its own world. Even during general quarters, when the entire ship is at battle stations, reactor operations continue with their own protocols, their own communication systems, and their own chain of command. These chambers feature independent ventilation, power, and communication systems, allowing them to operate autonomously if necessary. The nuclear spaces are so isolated that specialized procedures exist for emergency communication if normal methods fail. The nuclear heart of an aircraft carrier represents technological isolation taken to its extreme. A ship within a ship, designed to continue functioning regardless of what happens elsewhere aboard. The Intelligence Nerve Center. While the nuclear reactors power the vessel, the intelligence spaces represent its brain. Hidden deep within the superstructure, the island rising above the flight deck, lies a collection of compartments known as Sensitive Compartmented Information Facilities, or SCIFs. These rooms house some of the most advanced intelligence-gathering equipment in existence, capable of intercepting communications, analyzing radar signatures, and processing vast amounts of data from satellites and reconnaissance aircraft. Access to these spaces requires special intelligence clearances beyond standard security requirements. The compartments themselves are designed as electronic fortresses, their walls, floors, and ceilings reinforced with special materials that prevent electronic emissions from escaping or outside signals from penetrating. Commander Robert Chen, a naval intelligence specialist, notes, "These spaces are designed to be electromagnetically and physically isolated from the rest of the world. When you step inside a CCIF, you're entering an information bubble where the most sensitive intelligence work can be conducted without fear of compromise." Inside these chambers, intelligence analysts monitor global developments, track potential threats, and provide the carrier's command staff with the information needed to make critical decisions. The work conducted here remains so classified that personnel are forbidden from discussing it even with family members. The Special Weapons Compartment. Perhaps the most isolated space aboard certain aircraft carriers is the Special Weapons Compartment, SWC. Though the Navy neither confirms nor denies the presence of nuclear weapons aboard specific vessels, these specialized storage areas exist to house the most powerful weapons in the American arsenal when deployed. These chambers represent the ultimate expression of security and isolation. Constructed as a vault within a vault, the SWC incorporates multiple physical barriers, including specialized doors resembling bank vaults that weigh several tons each. The compartment operates under the two-person rule. No individual is ever permitted to be alone in these spaces, regardless of rank or clearance level. This ensures that no single person can take unauthorized actions with the materials stored within. Master Chief Thomas Reynolds, who served 30 years in the Navy, including time on nuclear security teams, explains the psychological isolation. It's not just physical isolation, it's mental too. The responsibility weighs on you. You're working in a space that most people aboard don't even know exists, handling materials that require absolute focus and adherence to procedure. Entry to these compartments requires passing through a series of checkpoints where armed guards verify credentials and biometric information against a limited access roster. Inside, specialized environmental controls maintain precise temperature and humidity levels, while monitoring systems track radiation and other environmental factors. Communications with the outside world follow strict protocols, with dedicated secure lines connecting directly to the ship's command center and, if necessary, to national command authorities. The Electronic Warfare Suite. In an age of advanced electronic threats, carriers maintain specialized electronic warfare chambers where technicians monitor for potential attacks against the ship's complex sensor and communication systems. These spaces house equipment designed to detect, analyze, and counter enemy electronic signals, from radar jammers to sophisticated cyber weapons. The compartments themselves are heavily shielded to prevent electromagnetic interference, creating natural isolation from the rest of the vessel. Captain Lisa Rodriguez, an electronic warfare specialist with multiple carrier deployments, describes these spaces. "We operate in what amounts to an electromagnetic clean room. The shielding is so effective that when the door closes, you're essentially cut off from the outside world electronically. It creates an unusual working environment. isolated by necessity, yet responsible for protecting the entire battle group from invisible threats. Personnel working in these spaces undergo specialized training in electronic warfare tactics and equipment operation. The nature of their work often requires them to maintain unusual shift schedules, further contributing to their isolation from the regular rhythm of carrier life. As we continue bringing you these in-depth documentaries about military technology and operations, your support helps us research and produce high-quality content. Join our community of military enthusiasts by becoming a patron today. Link in the description. Your contribution allows us to go deeper into these fascinating topics while maintaining our independence. The Communication Nexus. Deep within the carrier's island structure lies the Communication Nexus, a collection of compartments housing equipment that maintains contact with Fleet Command, other vessels, and in some cases, national leadership. These spaces contain some of the most sophisticated communication technology ever developed, including systems designed to maintain connectivity even during nuclear conflict. Specialized terminals connect to the Defense Department's classified networks, allowing for secure communication with command authorities anywhere in the world. The most sensitive of these systems operate in isolated spaces accessible only to communications specialists with top security clearances. Equipment in these areas operates on independent power supplies and connects to multiple redundant transmission systems, ensuring command and control remains intact regardless of the ship's condition. Senior Chief Ellen Martinez, who served as a communications specialist aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln, describes the environment. Working in secure communications means operating in a bubble. The spaces are physically isolated. The equipment is isolated from the ship's regular networks, and the information passing through your hands is often known only to a handful of people aboard. You become accustomed to holding secrets that would amaze most of your shipmates. The commanding officer's in-port cabin isolation aboard a carrier isn't always about nuclear weapons or classified intelligence. Sometimes it's about leadership and the burden of command. The commanding officer's in-port cabin represents a different kind of isolation, the necessary separation between the captain and the crew they lead. Located in a secure area of the ship, this private space provides the commanding officer with a retreat where they can make difficult decisions without distraction. Admiral James Stavridis, RETARC, former carrier group commander, explains, "Command is inherently isolating. The captain must maintain a certain distance to lead effectively. The in-port cabin becomes more than quarters. It's where the heaviest decisions are made, often alone or with just a few key advisors." While not as technically isolated as other spaces we've discussed, this cabin represents emotional and psychological isolation. Here, the commanding officer bears the ultimate responsibility for the lives of thousands and a warship worth billions. The brig. Among the most isolated spaces aboard any naval vessel is the brig, the ship's detention facility. Located deep within the carrier's hull, these secure compartments house sailors who have committed serious violations of military law or pose security risks. The brig represents isolation by design, a space deliberately separated from the normal flow of ship life. Heavy doors, surveillance systems, and specialized security protocols ensure that detainees remain secured while awaiting adjudication of their cases. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Williams, who served as a Master-at-Arms, the Navy's police force, explains, "The brig is isolated both physically and procedurally. Access is strictly controlled, communications are monitored, and operations follow detailed protocols that differ from anywhere else aboard ship." While housing far fewer personnel than other carrier departments, the brig's staff operates in a unique environment where security concerns create natural separation from the broader ship's company. Isolation by necessity. The isolated spaces we've explored aren't designed this way on a whim. Their separation from the wider vessel serves critical functions that enable the carrier to fulfill its mission. For classified spaces, isolation provides security, preventing unauthorized access and containing sensitive information. For nuclear components, isolation offers safety, protecting the crew from radiation and segregating potentially hazardous systems. For command functions, isolation creates the environment needed for clear decision-making during crisis. Dr. Margaret Chen, a naval architecture historian, puts it in perspective. Aircraft carriers represent the pinnacle of compartmentalization. Their design reflects lessons learned over centuries of naval warfare, the understanding that ships must be divided into separate watertight compartments to survive damage. Modern carriers extend this concept beyond physical damage control to information security, creating spaces isolated for reasons beyond merely staying afloat. This isolation creates a fascinating social dynamic. Sailors working in these segregated spaces often develop unique subcultures with their own traditions, jargon, and working patterns that differ from the rest of the ship's company. Life in isolation. What's it like to work in these isolated environments day after day, often for deployments lasting many months? Lieutenant James Wilson, who served in a carrier's intelligence center, describes the experience. You form incredibly tight bonds with the small group working alongside you. When you spend 12-hour shifts in a classified space where you can't discuss your work with outside friends, your coworkers become family in a unique way. The isolation extends beyond working hours. Personnel assigned to the most sensitive areas often live in separate berthing compartments, eat at different times than the general crew, and participate in separate recreational activities. This separation helps maintain operational security, but creates additional challenges for those living this compartmentalized existence. Psychologists who study military deployment note that personnel working in isolated shipboard environments develop specialized coping mechanisms. Regular rotation of duties, mandatory rest periods, and structured social activities help counteract the effects of prolonged isolation. Technological isolation. Beyond physical separation, many spaces aboard carriers maintain technological isolation, separate computer networks, independent power supplies, and dedicated environmental systems. The ship's classified networks operate entirely separate from unclassified systems, with no physical connections between them. This air gapping prevents sensitive information from being compromised through cyber attacks or accidental disclosure. Critical systems maintain backup power sources independent from the ship's main electrical grid, ensuring they remain operational even if primary systems fail. Communication equipment includes redundant transmission methods, from satellite links to extremely low-frequency systems capable of reaching submerged submarines. Commander Alexander Wright, a naval technology specialist, explains, "We design for what we call graceful degradation, the ability to maintain core capabilities even as systems are compromised." Isolation is key to this approach. By separating critical systems, we ensure that damage or infiltration in one area doesn't cascade throughout the vessel. Training for isolation. Working in the carrier's most isolated spaces requires specialized training beyond standard naval education. Personnel undergo rigorous screening before receiving assignments to these areas, with extensive background investigations and psychological evaluations. Once selected, sailors receive intensive training in their specialized fields, along with additional instruction in security protocols, emergency procedures, and the unique requirements of operating in isolated environments. Captain Richard Henderson, who commanded the nuclear department aboard the USS Carl Vinson, describes the preparation. Before a sailor ever sets foot in a reactor compartment, they've completed nearly 2 years of training. We're not just teaching technical skills, we're building the mindset needed to operate effectively in isolation, where you can't simply call for outside help if problems arise. This training emphasizes self-sufficiency and problem-solving, preparing personnel to handle emergencies with limited external support. Scenarios practiced during drills often involve the loss of communication with the rest of the ship, forcing isolated departments to make critical decisions independently. The future of isolation. As naval technology evolves, the isolated spaces aboard aircraft carriers continue to advance. Newer vessels like the USS Gerald R. Ford incorporate design improvements based on decades of operational experience. Automated systems reduce the number of personnel required in hazardous areas like reactor compartments. Advanced networking technology provides better communication while maintaining necessary security separation. Improved ergonomics make extended stays in isolated compartments less physically taxing. Naval architects designing the next generation of carriers face the challenge of balancing isolation with integration, creating spaces secure enough to protect sensitive operations while connected enough to function as part of a unified vessel. Dr. Robert Chang, a naval systems engineer working on future carrier designs, explains, The trend is towards smarter isolation, maintaining separation where absolutely necessary, while finding safe ways to share information and resources where possible. The goal is carriers that combine the security benefits of compartmentalization with the efficiency advantages of integration. The most isolated places aboard an aircraft carrier, from reactor compartments to intelligence centers to special weapons storage, represent extraordinary examples of design seclusion. These spaces exist apart from the daily life experienced by most sailors, yet they form the core of what makes these vessels the most powerful warships ever created. The men and women who work in these isolated environments perform some of the most demanding jobs in the military, maintaining critical systems and handling sensitive materials with minimal external support. Their dedication ensures that aircraft carriers remain ready to project American power anywhere in the world. Next time you see an aircraft carrier cutting through the waves, remember that beyond the visible flight deck operations lies another world, spaces so isolated and secure that few will ever glimpse them. Yet their existence helps guarantee the freedom of the seas we all depend upon. The most isolated places on an aircraft carrier remain hidden by design, invisible to most yet indispensable to all. If you found this exploration of naval technology and operations interesting, please support our channel by hitting the like button and subscribing for more in-depth content about military history and capabilities. Your engagement helps us continue bringing these fascinating stories to light.